Hey guys, welcome back to another channel episode. The channel where I talk all about how you don't need to be a CEO in order to have some impact on the world. And in this episode, I'm going to give a little update on my week like I usually do. Last week, as you guys know, was a little different. I gave more of a long-term update rather than a short-term update, but this week we're back on schedule telling you all about my journey to learn data science in only 6 months and how that's faring. We are in week 21 or so, I'm not sure. And last week I didn't do my usual 2 chapters because as I mentioned, I had a huge update to tell you guys, but in this video we're going to go back to what we were talking about before, which was the books I was studying from. Now, again, this week I did very little from the books, but I at least did do some. As I mentioned 2 weeks ago, I was working on Intro to Statistical Learning with R and having a great time with that book, but then I realized that I needed to know a little bit more of linear algebra before I kept going. So I took a little detour and started learning from the book Linear Algebra for Machine Learning, which is a small book really just on the basics of NumPy and linear algebra for machine learning purposes only. And I thought that that would be perfect and super helpful. And it was, and I continued that this week. I was doing chapter 10, I think. As I mentioned earlier, the book is really small, so I'm going through it pretty fast. It really just includes examples and how to do them and with code. And so that's what I do. I just kind of copy it over, see if I understand, and move on. And I can't wait to get back to Intro to Statistical Learning. Now, this week, another thing I did was I decided to move my computer away from Windows and onto Linux. I installed Ubuntu on another SSD and I connected that to my computer using just a usual USB cable. So I have an SSD going into a USB onto my computer, and I'm using that as my kind of like remote install of Linux. And wow, I really like it. I wasn't expecting to like it, but I really do. I did do this for a specific reason, and that's that the boot camp I'm going to be attending requires you to be using Mac OS and or Linux, and I didn't really want to go out to buy a machine yet for machine learning. If I were to do that with a Mac, it would be expensive and or I would have to use a lot of cloud-based GPUs, but I have a currently okay GPU I used to use for gaming, and so I'm going to continue using that. That was kind of my week, setting that up and stuff. I find that when I first installed Linux years ago on a Mac, actually, I had at the time, I was super scared of using the terminal for everything. I really felt like I was going to mess something up. But because through just learning a bunch more of code and just learning a little bit of how to run code in a terminal, I was able to kind of get used to using the terminal in Windows. So now when I moved over to Linux and everything's terminal based, I actually find that it's actually quite fun, and now I'm just bashing whatever into it and not really worrying about what happens. That might also have to do with the fact that I don't have anything important on this Linux. Just have the operating system and my Anaconda environment and Visual Studio Code, and that's kind of it. Everything else is safe in another SSD in my computer, but that is that is kind of something that happens when you first install Linux. You're kind of scared to use terminal all the time, but you get used to it really quickly. You remember the commands that you use all the time, and then you just look up the commands that you need and you forgot. And yeah, I mean that's kind of the update for this week. I have also been doing a little bit of kind of work based on what the bootcamp like wants me to know before I start. The bootcamp is gonna start in October, the first week of October, so it's September 25th or something like that. So I only have a little bit of time in order to read the materials that I need and get everything set up for the most part. Because I've been doing this for, almost 6 months, I'm kind of ready to go, but there were some things that I did need to check off before, and I've done that. And yeah, like I said, I continued with the linear algebra book and can't wait to read just a little bit more of the introduction to statistical learning book before I start the boot camp. Once I start, I'm sure I won't have enough time to go over that book anymore. But, that book, it really is like the Bible for, statistical learning, and at least, the processes you use until, you get into like deep learning and stuff like that. So, I'm still gonna go through it. Hopefully, when the boot camp ends. But for now, I'm gonna put that book in pause. Next video, I'm gonna talk a little bit about how my learning data science in 6 months experience is going. It's kind of, towards the last couple weeks, has gotten more difficult and less focused on chapters and more on what I have to do to get ready for, this boot camp, and if I was even going to do this boot camp. So it's been a little bit more administration work, I guess, rather than deep work, but I know for a fact that this boot camp is going to be so much deep work, and that's why I chose to do it in the end. So super excited, and hopefully I can show you guys some ML code soon, and that will be super fun and interesting in general, and thinking of putting up another study with me video, so stay tuned for that. And that's it for this week. Thanks for joining me, and see you next time.